Welcome everyone as you enter into the virtual room. My name's Rebecca Billings and I am one of the commissioners at the Essential Services Commission. So hopefully you all know why you're here, the public forum for our draft decision on South East Water. Just to let you know, this forum is being recorded to ensure access for those unable to attend. Any statement, comment or question you make will be included in the recording, which we plan to make available on our website. To start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands wherever you are today. For me, that's the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of the service area of South East Water. I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal people here today. Thank you to everyone who's taken the time to come together this afternoon. I would like to firstly introduce staff from the Commission. Marcus Crudden, the Executive Director of Price Monitoring and Regulation, is here today. Angeline Bilas is our Project Manager, and there are other members of the water team at the Commission. From South East Water, I would like to welcome Lara Olsen, the Managing Director, and other members of the South East Water team. And thank you, most of all, to stakeholders and customers of South East Water who have joined us on the call today. Before we get to the agenda, just some quick housekeeping. If you do have any questions or comments while someone is talking, please feel free to type them into the chat so we can build these into the conversation. Please keep your microphone muted when not speaking to avoid feedback and background noise. In addition to your participation today, you can provide feedback via Engage Victoria. And please do let us know if there's another preferred option for how we can engage with you during this process. We are always open to feedback. The web address, if you don't know, for Engage Victoria will be on the slides we are about to start sharing with you. I'll use the first part of today's forum to give you a brief introduction of our role in price regulation. But the main purpose of this event is to provide you with the opportunity to ask questions and hear from you any comments you'd like to share with regards to South East Water's draft price review. To help shape today's discussion, we'll cover how we have assessed the price submission and come to our draft decision. And then I'll pass to Lara from South East Water, who will have the opportunity to outline their submission and how they are intending to respond to our draft decision. And then we will open to the floor and have the opportunity for you to ask questions and provide comments. We do appreciate being able to have an open and honest conversation with you today. Insights from these engagements do help shape our decisions. I'd just like to start with a little bit about the Commission. We regulate Victoria's energy, water and transport sectors. We oversee the Fair Go rate system and administer the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program. We have been regulating water prices for more than 20 years, including for South East Water. For the water sector, we approve prices and service standards, monitor and report on performance, and administer customer service codes. We are currently reviewing water prices that will apply from 1 July 2023 for 14 water businesses across Victoria. The prices we approve reflect an assessment of the efficient costs water businesses need to recover to provide valued services to their customers. Following this consultation period, we will issue a determination that sets the maximum prices that South East Water may charge customers. I'd now like to ask Marcus to step us through how the Commission has assessed the price submission and come to our draft decision. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks, Rebecca. So the Commission is responsible for assessing the price submission, and we need to assess that complies with an instrument issued by the Victorian Government called the Water Industry Regulatory Order. That assesses why the Commission is an independent arm's length regulator. That sets out the ground rules we have to and the business has to follow. It also sets out what services are regulated, so we can only assess the prices for things that are within the order, and we have to assess against a number of specified criteria in there. We also issue and are required by the order to issue a guidance paper, and that sets out our expectations of the overall approach followed by the water businesses in preparing their price submissions to us. We also have within that what's known as the Primo framework, which is an incentive framework that provides some extra returns to businesses for outperformance or the level of ambition contained within their price submission. We also need to make sure that the pricing submissions comply with relevant criteria set out in the Water Industry Act and the Essential Services Commission Act. So it's a reasonably complex framework, but what needs to be clear is we need to assess the submission that's put to us. So in effect, the criteria, they lead the dance. We don't get to specify what the business must do or how it goes about doing it. We have to look at the proposals before us. We don't get to put out alternative proposals or to suggest they do something else or spend money in different areas. It really is what is contained within their proposal is what we need to address and consider within that. Next slide, thanks. So, it really is South East's responsibility, and it's Lara and her team that have to own the proposal and have to implement after we give approval to it. Our decision in the legal framework at draft stage is we either approve to say these have met the requirements or not approve, and where we not approve at draft, we need to say the actions that the business needs to take to gain approval. If they don't meet those requirements, that's the point of the process where we can step in and set prices, but it's only at that point. So we don't actually set prices or override what's been put forward for the business unless they fail to comply with those rules. This point now is allowing everyone to have input, the business and customers, before we actually issue their final decision. The final decisions will be in the middle of June after South East responds, and also customers can respond on that. So we're expecting submissions by the 9th of May on the proposal, and later this afternoon Lara will outline South East's key elements of that proposal that will come in next week, and there's a chance to perhaps probe us or her about that before it's finalised. Next slide, please. How we go about assessing the proposal, and this is at a high level, but we look at the engagement programs undertaken. So South East run a deliberative process with significant consumer input to that. We're also, though, looking not just that they have engaged, but how the feedback from that engagement has been incorporated into the proposal and the priorities of the water businesses. We test assumptions about expenditure and demand forecasts. We verify the supporting assumptions and data. So Lara and his team will have had lots of follow-up requests from us to clarify things within the submission or seek additional supporting data to verify the information. We look at how South East Water has managed risk, and from a regulator's perspective, it's how it's managed risk on behalf of the customers, not that it's transferring risk to customers. So how it's managing things, and it is taking responsibility to manage risks or uncertainty for customers. We also look at the performance of the water business over the last 5 years. So this is the first time under the Primo framework we've actually looked at performance. The targets and obligations were set in the last review, and we asked them, business ourselves, reflect back on whether the things committed to. A further big part of our program is reviewing the operating and capital expenditure. We look at both the prudency and efficiency of the costings and the timing assumptions to assume they were reasonable. We do that with some arm's length independent experts where appropriate. It is a significant part of South East Water's proposal that there is a large capital investment program, and that's been given a fairly thorough review. By and large, we've ticked off on most elements. Can we get the next slide? So in terms of this approved, not approved, we have accepted the 5-year pricing period, and we will see a small decrease in real terms in pricing over that period. We propose to accept many of the key elements of the submission, including demand forecasts, tariff structures and form of price control, including the removal of the sewage disposal charge. So more emphasis will be put on the water variable charge. I know for some customers, the sewage disposal charge is a point of confusion or lacks understanding. I'm sure Lara will touch on this in her presentation. We've adopted a revenue requirement of 4.633 million over the 5-year period. So as you can see, there are significant resources that go to South East Water, and a chunk that also goes on to Melbourne Water as the bulk supplier for metropolitan Melbourne, but it is a substantial business. Now, in terms of some things we asked for further input on this, we have asked for sort of identifying impacts and changes approach. There were some issues around OPEX and CAPEX and the classification of that we've asked for that come up in our review. The need to adjust tariffs and prices to reflect any changes in the revenue requirements and broader circumstances. For new customer contributions, we've asked for more information on transition plans to support achieving cost reflectivity, and we've also been working with them on some more information to justify how some of the cost allocations on new customer contributions have occurred. And we're reviewing some sunk costs inclusion within new customer contributions, which have not previously been included by South East Water in the existing charges. Next slide. We're seeing, as I said, real reductions in bills. So based on the submission, a sort of reduction for a residential customer from $969 to $908 in real terms. However, with the March quarter inflation figure coming out last week, it really does mean prices are going to stay fairly constant in nominal terms, perhaps a few dollars higher. So that high inflation rate has actually largely cancelling out a price reduction below inflation. So we do recognise that, and we do recognise perhaps the impact that's having, and South East Water's proposal does provide enhanced customer assistance to vulnerable customers and those facing payment difficulties in the current climate. Next slide. Overall, we actually increased operating expenditure. That comes from the issue I raised earlier about the classification, that there were some elements we thought were more appropriately treated as operating expenditure rather than capital. So that has gone up. Consequently, that's led to some reductions in the capital expenditure and some other minor adjustments out of that expenditure consultants review. Next slide. Overall, across the current period on capital expenditure, South East has tracked fairly close to expectation. Generally, costs have been higher in this period. As many of you are aware, it's been a very heated civil construction environment, and input costs have been rising for water businesses in that sort of trend. We do also see perhaps a significant increase in capital over the next 5 years, and that's something, as I said, that's been subject to a fair bit of review. There are perhaps significant input costs on water business in the current environment that are driving up costs, as well as the expanded capital works program by the businesses. There's a number of upgrades to renewals of aging assets and treatment plants, as well as a significant expenditure on digital metering. And I think Lara will take you through those key cost drivers in her presentation. Next slide. Operating expenditure thus far in the current period, South East had tracked fairly close to forecasts. Again, it is something we've seen. Most businesses are over the forecasts from when they were set 5 years ago. Again, there has been this pressure on costs faced by water businesses. There have been significant rises in some areas like chemical and insurance, cyber security, things that perhaps been more spent on than expected at the time. We do see South East operating expenditure is forecast to be higher over the next 5 years than currently. Again, that's something we've looked at fairly thoroughly. We're reasonably satisfied with those forecasts, but again, it's something we'll be reminding businesses to be conscious of cost control in a perhaps heated environment circumstance and doing all they can to beat or exceed the operating expenditure benchmarks. Next slide. Overall, as I mentioned, the Primo framework, that we've satisfied that South East has met the requirements of an advanced business under that framework. So we've considered that South East has met expectations for delivering against its outcome commitments over the current period. Its engagement programs have given customers an opportunity to participate and to provide feedback on prices and the services affecting them. We have seen it has been an inclusive and diverse set of customers that have been engaged with as part of this review. Its proposed outcomes and target measures have been developed in consultation with customers and demonstrate customer support and are providing improvements in customer value. We do identify that South East has taken on risk on behalf of customers, as identified earlier, including some demand risk and absorbing the guaranteed service level schemes and taking on some other areas of risk related to costs. Our draft decision does mean that in general terms, there will be a small reduction before inflation, noting the inflation will be added to the 23-24 bills, and we acknowledge that inflation will be high in the next couple of years and across the period, and that's something we are still challenging businesses to think about that in their price paths and how they deal with it. Customers should continue to receive a high quality water supply and the safe treatment and disposal of sewage, and investments in new infrastructure across the period. South East will continue to reduce its environmental footprint. Like all water businesses, it's required to have 100% renewable energy by 2025 and is committing to reductions and moving to net carbon zero over, I think, by 2030, and seeking to respond to the challenges of climate change and the impact that may have on resource security over time. Next one.
That's the last slide.
Yeah, that's the last of ours. So with that, we'll hand over to Lara Olson, Managing Director of South East Water, to present an overview of her submission and how they're responding to the issues that we've raised in our draft decision. Thank you, Lara.
Thanks, Marcus and Rebecca, and to the ESC team and my team for being here, but particularly the stakeholders and customers. As Rebecca mentioned, our price submission, as for the other water businesses, has been heavily influenced by customers, and we really welcome the opportunity to discuss what we're putting here forward and also answer any questions or respond to comments that you have. I'm going to just share my screen and hope that this goes smoothly. One moment.
Fingers crossed.
I know. Really?
Come on.
There we go. Can everyone see that?
Perfect. Thanks, Laura.
Right. Thank you. I too would like to acknowledge the land that I'm on today, which is the Bunurong people. I'm here in Frankston, and also acknowledge that our service area is on the lands of both the Bunurong people and the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also reflect on their deep care of land and waterways, of which we're starting to really learn from and about from them too. I really appreciate them sharing their knowledge with us. Today I want to talk about 4 different areas to give you a snapshot of who we are as South East Water, then to talk through our process that we've gone through with working with customers to come up with our pricing submission and priorities, the key areas that we're looking to deliver in our pricing submission, and also the specific areas that Marcus mentioned that we've been asked to reflect and respond on by the ESC. And as I do that, there'll be 4 key themes that keep coming out as we go through it. The first is about delivering on customer priorities. It's been a focus for us for these last 5 years. And really, as we've gone through this engagement process, our customers have told us what's important to them and have helped us make some of the trade-offs that we've made through the pricing submission. The second is about investing in our future. We are investing for these next 5 years in terms of delivering the outcomes that our customers have asked from us, but also to make sure that what we do in terms of our environmental impact, our impact in terms of making sure we've got assets that deliver for our customers and community for the long term, and also that we take into account climate change, means that we're well set up for the future. The third part is around more proactive and inclusive customer support. This is an area that we already are focused on, but we know that we can do more and better in, and I'll reflect on that as I go through. And finally, to make sure that whilst we do deliver these important investments, we maintain affordability. And our customers have told us about that, about the two different aspects of how we need to do that, about maintaining affordability overall for our customers, but also in particular to support vulnerable customers when they need it most. So in terms of South East Water, that green map is a map of our service area, and we service from South Bank in the city down to Portsea and about 30 kilometres east of Pakenham. We've got a number of water treatment plants or water recycling plants there that you can see with the purple dots. So Mount Martha, Kuirup, Lang Lang, Longwarry, Bonio, and a number of others. And I'll talk about them as we go through because we've got a number of upgrades that are happening to those treatment plants. We service 1.8 or just under 1.8 million customers across our service area, and we've got a fantastic, thriving, growing and diverse customer base with over 200 languages spoken in our service area. One of the metrics that we measure internally is the number of languages that our employees speak as we look to reflect on our customer base and employee base. I think we're just over 90 at the moment, so we've still got some space to go there, but certainly looking to be more reflective of our customer base. In terms of our pricing submission, we wanted to make sure that our pricing submission was reflected in what the organisation does every day and across the next 5 years. So we've incorporated all the feedback from our pricing submission into our overall strategy. Our strategy is to focus on innovating with purpose and acting with care to deliver healthy water for life. That's for our customers and our community and the environment. And you can see that there's a number of focus areas there that we really do use to drive our operations. I'm just going to pick on one in particular, which is protecting our environment. The 4 focus areas there, you'll see we've got different investments to meet those. The top one is around caring for country. And as I've spoken about, that's really learning from the traditional owners in our service area and the broader Aboriginal community to make sure that we understand some of the water and land knowledge that they have held for years and years and incorporate it into our processes as we all move towards self-determination. Net zero emissions is another key target for us. As Marcus mentioned, we're committed to net zero by 2030 with a stretch target of 2038. Enhanced water security is something that we as an organisation are focused on, and our customers told us that we need to do more on. And so we're working with our metropolitan colleagues, so Melbourne Water and the other metropolitan water retailers, to look at water security across the whole of Melbourne and also place-based solutions. So that includes some of our recycled water schemes, like the ones we're doing in Dingley or the Briars or North Frankston. And finally, we've incorporated a new area, which is towards zero waste. One of the areas our customers in both the customer panel and through online surveys told us about was, yes, they expected us to work on net zero emissions, but they also wanted us to focus more around waste. And so we've got a range of actions across these next 5 years to really have a good handle on what waste we produce and how we can treat it as resources and work with others to better recycle or reuse or avoid it in the first place. In terms of that engagement program with customers, this is sort of a snapshot overview of it. We started by listening to customers, so asking them what they would like to be consulted on and how they would like to engage with us. We then in phase 2 did a range of focus groups, about 18 in total, to make sure we were getting the voices of different components of our customer base. So that included a customer focus area focused on renters, on young people, on older people, on the cold community, on those experiencing hardship, and with Aboriginal customers as well, amongst others. We use that information to then put out some willingness to pay surveys. So some online surveys where we allowed customers to tell us what mattered to them and how much they were willing to pay for different increases in services or different changes to outcomes, and then get a sense of what that meant for the overall bill. We then had a customer panel with 40 people who really provided immense instruction and advice and dedication representing their community around what was important to them. That community panel went from 17 years of age to 70 years of age. Because it was COVID impacted for some of those meetings, we provided some of our customers with internet access because they didn't have internet access to make sure that we could get that really diverse and inclusive customer input that we needed. We then looked to come up with our draft outcomes and to make sure that we had actually done what our customers wanted and had understood them correctly, went back to our customers to close the loop, to check that the priorities that they had asked for us was what was reflected in our pricing submission. And these were the 8 areas that our community panel told us that they wanted to see in our price submission. And then when we went back with our price submission initiatives, some of which I'll cover today, this is what they told us in terms of if they could love it, like it, or live with it. Some of those areas I've touched upon in terms of water security. A number of those areas won't be a surprise to anyone. So our customers did want to see reliable service. They did want to see increased awareness in terms of what our organisation does and what we're doing to help them and help the environment. They wanted to see more simple billing, clearer billing that they could more easily understand and also have more control over. As Marcus touched on, we did put in a submission around digital meters. So we're proposing to roll out digital meters to our full customer base across this next 6 years. We worked with our customer panel on what the bill would look like without digital meters, with digital meters over different timeframes in terms of the rollout, and proposed a 6-year timeframe, which, as you can see from here, most of our customers either loved it or liked it. The customers asked for increased communication and communication channels of the type that they preferred. Some of our customers want to be able to do all the aspects online. Other customers want to be able to call us and know that we can answer their questions. So we're working on a program, as you'll see, around increasing different customer channels to meet that need. Our customers wanted us to continue on our path to innovation and to continue to keep striving to be better. And they wanted to make sure with all of this that we focused on affordability, both overall and for our most vulnerable customers. And so in terms of that, I would just touch on a few of these areas. The first is about how we improve our customer support and experience. As mentioned, our customer panel, and we know it through our customer conversations, want us and we want to be more proactive in terms of our support for customers. We, our customer care team, support over 7,000 customers at the moment who are experiencing vulnerability. And we all know that anyone can experience vulnerability, and we're all just a few life changes away from that happening to us. And so we've invested an additional 1.5 million in supporting these customers through a range of payment plans and payment support, and also working partly through digital meters, but working with our customers to try and identify earlier customers who may experience payment difficulties and ensure that we provide them the support earlier so they can help and we can help manage those payment difficulties. The next part is around empowering our customers so that they've got the information to save money. As I mentioned, we are looking to roll out digital meters across this next 6 years. Currently, we've got about 80,000 digital meters across our customer base, which means that we've got enough digital meters to statistically see the impact that they can have for our customers. We know from this that about 6% of our customers have a leak that we've been able to identify with the digital meter. And to date, we've saved over 750 million litres for customers and just over $3 million in terms of getting to those leaks earlier. And finally, as I touched on, our customers are looking for better customer experience and more self-service. So we're providing increased self-service channels and also measuring the customer experience and impact at different touch points. We want to make sure if a customer talks to one of our field service teams in the street or rings us up on the phone or provides a fault that we should be aware of, that they have a great experience. And so we're measuring this at each of the touch points with a view to improve that as we go. As Marcus touched on, we do have a large capital program. So we are proposing to invest about 1.9 billion across these next 5 years. Part of that is for the digital meters that I touched on. We're also upgrading 4 of the treatment plants that you saw earlier in the map. And that's our Mount Martha treatment plant, our Pakenham treatment plant, our Longwarry treatment plant, and our Lang Lang treatment plant. Many of you on the call, if you're in the Longwarry or the Lang Lang area, will know about the customer growth that we've seen in those regions. And so it's important for us to upgrade those plants to be able to cope with the flows that we're seeing into them. We've also got a number of upgrades to other parts of our network. So Hannah Street, for those that are in South Bank or South Melbourne, is a big area for us to improve. Bellato Road in Clyde, as well as deliver our recycled water projects such as the Dingley project. Our largest project in terms of capital expenditure, though, is the digital meter project. There's a range of customer benefits that I've touched on previously, but the digital meters and sensors also enable us to better identify leaks in our own network. We know when we've spoken with customers about water security, customers are supportive of us making sure that we've got enough water for Melbourne's future, but also want to make sure that we're doing our bit as a water network to make sure that we've identified any leaks in our network and fix them earlier. This is great for a number of reasons. 1, we obviously save water. 2, we minimise interruptions for customers. And 3, because it takes a lot of energy to pump water around the system, if we can prevent leaks, then we can also prevent that energy being used and the emissions associated with it. In terms of our operating expenditure, we're pleased that we've got the highest commitment to operating efficiencies. So as was shown in the graph earlier, we do have a step up in operating expenditure, but as part to offset that, we have committed to a 2% efficiency year on year that we strongly believe that we can hit and will help keep our bills affordable. What we are investing in terms of operating expenditure is shown on this slide. One is we've just recently signed up 2 new maintenance providers who we're working with to try and minimise the number of interruptions that our customers have. We're also increasing our expenditure on water quality. You may have seen previously in terms of that service area, it's a large service area with over 13,000 kilometres of water pipes that we want to make sure that we've got safe, clean drinking water at all parts of that network. So we're increasing the sensors and monitoring of that to make sure that we can do that. We're also increasing our capacity and ability to engage with traditional owners as part of that planning process and land management. And finally, we're also adapting for climate change. We've seen in terms of the number of incidents that we've had over the last 2 years that there is increased storms, increased wind events, increased flooding as well. And so we're looking to make sure that our network is resilient to that to minimise any interruptions to our customers. In terms of what this means for our customer bills, we're pleased, as you can see in this graph, that our customer bills have been coming down since that 2018-19 period. That as we go from this year to this next pricing submission, so between the 22-23, 23-24 period, we've got that drop that Marcus spoke of earlier, and then we remain flat after that. So despite the increase in capital expenditure and operating expenditure, we're using other levers, including our efficiency commitment, to reduce customers' bills before inflation in that first year and then keep them flat after that. In terms of the draft decision, the ESC asked us to respond and reflect on 6 areas in particular. So I just want to go through each of those areas to outline our proposed response and really invite questions and discussions on this. The first was on our guaranteed service levels. So in our price submission, we proposed 3 new guaranteed service levels. And this is where we've made a commitment to customers and we haven't kept that commitment. And so as part of acknowledging that we haven't kept that, we make a payment to customers. In addition to the customer engagement program that I mentioned, we also have collected over this last 5 years 100,000 customer surveys. So I'd like to thank any customer when you've called us up or had an interaction with us and you've answered that survey about how that service went or how you were feeling about South East Water, because that also helps influence us in terms of what we do. One of the key areas that our customers told us about was just the impact if there's a water spill inside their house or a sewage spill inside their house as well. And so one of the new guaranteed service levels that we introduced was around a $1,500 payment for when that happens. We also introduced a new GSL around a failure to notify a customer about a planned interruption. And working with the other Melbourne water corporations, a community rebate for when we put out a water quality advisory, so a do not drink or a boiled water notice. The ESC has proposed to accept our GSLs, and we too are really pleased to add these in, which have been agreed and really supported by our customers. We also are going to absorb the cost of any GSLs. So as I think the community would expect, if we need to make a payment, we're not then looking to add on the cost of those payments onto customer bills in later years. The next area was around new customer contributions, or is what sometimes is known as developer charges. And so these are charges for new customers connecting to our network. We propose to increase these by 5% and acknowledge that they're not yet cost reflective, but that we are moving towards this. We acknowledge as part of this that we wanted to balance out the price shock of a higher than 5% increase, whilst also trying to move to cost reflectivity. So we're mindful of the need to balance that and definitely support a more holistic review of how we make sure that we get that right and agreed by all parts of the community in the future. The next area that the ESC asked us to reflect on was the deployment of digital meters. The ESC proposed to accept our expenditure for the project, but also asked us to reflect on those initial years and what we could do to better manage the price impact to customers. We've reflected on that, and we will be looking to reduce the cost in year 1 of the digital meters and spread that out across year 2 to 6. And in doing that, we should better reflect the cost and benefits and better align them in the same period, but still meet our customer commitment to rolling out our digital meters across the full customer base within 6 years. The ESC also asked us about minor sewer alterations. They are alterations for existing customers where they might be modifying or relocating or extending their sewer network. It was identified that these were incorrect in how they were treated and that they should have been in prescribed services. We agree with this, and in our next submission, we'll include them in the right area, with good news that that change results in a lower price to customers. Then the final 2 was around the demand forecasts. In between submitting our price submission, there was a new update on the population forecast for Victoria, with Victoria in the Future 2022 released. We've checked this against the forecast that we use and pleased to see that it aligns in the longer term with the demand forecast that we've used. There's some ups and downs in between, but overall they do align, and so we're comfortable with our current demand forecasts. And as Mark has pointed out, following a review of the regulatory accounts, it was noticed that some areas in capital expenditure should have been in operating expenditure. We accept this and will be proposing to accept those changes in our submission back to the ESC. Finally, I just want to say thank you to everyone, all of our customers, our frontline teams, our regulatory team, our community stakeholders, and our customer advisory committee who've been involved in the process to get us here. I want to thank all the 100,000 people who filled out the customer surveys and really let you know that it does impact what we do and what we propose. We've got a clear set of measures now that we'll be reporting on across these next 5 years and look forward to delivering for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lara. Much appreciated for that comprehensive overview of your submission. Now is the time to open up to the floor, and we are very much looking forward to particularly customers of South East Water putting their hand up. I've done a few of these now, and it does take a little while for people to warm up. So if you don't mind, Lara, I might take the opportunity to ask the first question. Particularly interested in your digital meter rollout, and if you did touch on key benefits in terms of identifying water leakages. I do understand that there's also anticipated benefits in terms of delayed augmentation, etc. Just interested in terms of over the period of the investment, what are those key benefits to customers, and when will they see those reflected in prices from a benefit side as opposed to an investment cost side?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, for that question. And there's sort of two components to the answer to that. The first is, I suppose, that immediate benefit from a cost perspective for customers that do have a leak. So those 6% that I mentioned, on average, we do see that they save about $150 a year. So obviously the leak size varies, but that's the average that we are seeing. So that's part of that good news, immediate good news, if you like, for customers where we find that leak. Then in terms of the longer term, where the savings come from for customers, it is, as you mentioned, is partly in our own maintenance costs. So one of the areas that we use our sensors for is to detect leaks early in our network. We know that if we can get to the leaks when they're relatively small, it prevents them bursting through the road, for instance, and then the hassle that goes with that from a traffic and a safety and a water interruption service. So that is sort of the next saving. We do have a part of our 2% efficiency that we're looking to reach. Part of that is actually driven by what we believe will be our ability to identify leaks earlier, fix them earlier to reduce costs. And then the third part of that is overall delay, as we all do water efficiency and different integrated water management across the full network, that should help us delay further augmentations. We do know that overall, from where Melbourne's water system is, that we will need to increasingly add manufactured water into our overall network, just because we've got more people and less water coming in. But each step, be it water efficiency or integrated water management, can delay the need to do more and more of those augmentations.
Great, thanks, Lara. We do have a guest with their hand up. Henrik, would you mind coming off mute and introducing yourself?
Just introduce myself. My name's Henrik Kay. I'm in Frankston North. I'm on the Council's Disability Access and Inclusion Committee. And I would like to ask a few questions here. One, when is the digital water meters going to start being stored?
Great, Henrik. And just to make sure I've heard that correctly, am I right in ensuring your question is, where will the data be stored?
No, when are you going to start installing the digital meters?
Great. Sorry, I misheard that. Thank you.
That's
around
all right.
Installing them. Yes, so we have installed 80,000 to date. We've done that in different parts of our service region, partly to make sure that we had good data to test if they were delivering the customer benefits that we thought. So we did them in a range of established suburbs, new suburbs, more freestanding homes, some apartments, to make sure that we weren't skewing the data in any way. What we're now starting to do is, subject to a full approval of our price determination and rolling it out across the next 6 years, we'll start to do that in more areas. So there are some already in Frankston, maybe not at your house yet, but everyone will receive them in the next 6 years. And when you do receive them, we've got an onboarding pack that can help people understand what their digital meter can do and also where they can access that information around their usage.
Yeah, I was going to say, until the digital meters are installed, I'd like to suggest to you that you have a back-to-base reporting system introduced, whereby as soon as there's a leak, there's a report back to base, and you send an SMS to the resident, and in that SMS you say to them, do you wish a plumber to be called out, or do you want to do it yourself? That's just a cover until the digital meters are installed.
Yes, thank you. And it's a good point, and maybe two responses to that. One is certainly we do find when some customers call us with an unexpected high bill, if they don't have a digital meter, that is precisely that a leak has occurred, and it might have been at the start of their billing period and neither they or we realised. If that is the case, there's a range of different supports that we can do for those customers, particularly if it's a vulnerable customer, around assisting them with plumbing inspections, etc. The good news about the digital meters is we can start to see that in 24, 48 hours. We do then send out a text to our customers to let them know that we think they've got a leak. And at the moment, we're seeing about 70% of customers fix that leak on that first text.
I'm thinking until the digital meters are installed.
Yes.
Those that haven't got them, that you introduce a back-to-base system, and then you send them an SMS and ask them, do you want a plumber to come out or do it yourself? Just in between the period. That way, you can, catch them early.
Yeah, I take that on board. I think what we can do, we do have a process currently for customers with analog meters where there's a leak or an unexpected high bill. Maybe what we can keep doing as we roll out more digital meters is keep making sure that that process is keeping up to date with between the two different customer types.
I'm trying to make it easier for you, because in the Frankston City, Rebecca, and this is the council area, we have nationally is 19.6% of Australians have a disability. That's 4.4 million Australians. In Frankston City, it's 21.2% of the population. So that's higher than the national figure, Lara. So I take that on, just for your own records, so you're aware of the percentage. And do what you can to help people with disabilities where you can.
Yeah, thank you.
Because
noted.
I'm on that committee. I only had a meeting last week with Kinetic on some other issue. But one thing is, if you can, do like I suggest as regards the back to base until the digital meters are on board. Just so the courier sells.
Thank you, Heinrich. I think that's a really important point, particularly during that transition period. So I think Lara and the team will certainly take that on board.
That's what I'm saying, Rebecca, because there's going to be done in the transition period. Because if nothing's done, how are people going to act on it?
Yeah, thank you.
And they'll blame stuff it's water, for something that's not their fault as well. That we don't want.
Absolutely. Can I ask if anyone else on the call would like to put their hand up and ask Lara or the Commission a question? We have a very quiet participation today, Lara. Oh, Luke Lovell, would you like to come off mute and introduce yourself and ask a question?
Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, Lara, for the presentation. Luke Lovell, I'm a Senior Policy Officer at Consumer Action Law Centre. I just wanted to give space for customers to ask questions first. I think that's really important. I guess maybe more a comment, and we've been reviewing all of the businesses' submissions, and good to see you call that out in your presentation, Lara. I think three things for Southeast Water that we'd noted was around the new, actually this was for all businesses with the new customer connection costs, just making sure that that is cost reflective, we think is really important. You know, that developers are paying their fair share and existing customers aren't subsidising those new customer connections. And then one question just around GSLs. I think, you know, there's been really good engagement testing those with the customers. I guess one thing we've seen from some of the other businesses is increasing the value of their GSLs in this period, just so that you're not losing value over time. I was just wanting to clarify if that's something that Southeast is doing in their submission, or will they just, I know they're keeping the same GSLs, but will you be increasing the value or holding those steady?
Luke, I might respond. Thank you. Really appreciate that feedback. In terms of the GSLs, we have added some GSLs, so three GSLs, and the final one around water quality really was to try and reflect that when there is, for instance, a boiled water notice, we will also provide rebates for customers that choose to buy bottled water, but that we should have something in our approach that reflects that it's a service standard that customers would expect of us, and you know, we have breached in that sense. So when we looked at our GSLs with customers, we went down the path of doing sort of two steps. One is adding some where customers told us that they expected that of us and we didn't have them covered. And then the next part was making sure that then if we did have a year where we paid out GSLs, we didn't then roll that over to the next year and charge customers for it. So those were the two key steps that we took.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Luke, and thank you, Lara. We have Adam Jowett. Adam, would you mind coming off mute and introducing yourself?
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. Adam Jowett. I'm in the regulation team at Southeast Water. I just wanted to add to what Lara said, Luke, and point out another way that we've sort of tried to increase the value for customers in this submission. Back in the 2018 submission, we had two GSLs. One was around customers experiencing multiple sewer interruptions, and we had a separate one around customers experiencing greater than 5 water supply interruptions. So what we found in the engagement was that from a customer's perspective, an interruption is an interruption. So what we've done is we've actually increased value by creating a new combined GSL, which is where if a customer experiences more than 5, either water, sewer, or even a boil water or do not drink advisory, we'll actually count them just as a disruption. And if they get beyond 5, we'll offer that $60 GSL there too. So it's rather than just looking at the value itself, we actually, as in the monetary value, we looked at the impact, I suppose, to customers, and we found that it didn't really matter to them which one it was an interruption to service. So we tried to bundle that in together as a different way to deliver that additional value.
Thanks, Adam. That's
Adam.
A useful clarification there. Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the floor? Looks like you might be getting off easy today, Lara, but I think that might be an indication of the high quality process that you have been through to date in terms of your engagement with your customers. I will give one last call and then we might be able to wrap up a little bit early today. Lara, would you like to say any concluding comments from your end?
Thanks, Rebecca. I think just something that I have mentioned before, but definitely we are influenced by customer feedback at all touch points. So really encourage customers or stakeholders to put a submission in terms of that draft submission, and always talk to us. If we're doing something that's working well or not, then we're really interested to hear that feedback. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Lara, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. As I said in my opening comments, we do absolutely appreciate the feedback from customers, and if it wasn't appropriate for you to comment today, then any other form of engagement is absolutely welcome. We have the Engage Vic process, but we are also open to any other means or manners for which you would like to engage. Thank you all for coming this afternoon, and with that, I will draw this meeting to a close. Thank you all.